We're bringing it in on time and under budget. This is Mikey Wine here. Welcome in, aka Gundamonium Works, part 3 of the 1/48 scale resin Macross Tomahawk. And so the last couple episodes have been doing initial cleanup, gap fixing, repairs and stuff like that, gap fixing and seam lines, stuff like that, mold lines and lots of stuff like that. So, but since then, I have managed to go through and lay down the first, I want to say wave, but first round of primer on everything. And so now a lot of those little defects and things that I missed along the way initially are starting to show themselves. And so now it's all about the second stage of cleanup. So now that I've got the first round of primer down, I can see a lot of those blemishes that don't normally show themselves. Other than the big, major stuff that obviously I saw and showed you guys earlier, that was easy to see. But now you can start seeing those little blemishes and stuff like that. So I went ahead and I bought some Guy Notes Evo Surfacer. This is because I actually don't have enough of my Mr. Hobby resin primer left to do this with, and I couldn't have a hard time finding it. So a few friends of mine told me that the Evo Surfacer is really good for resin, and I decided to try it out, and so far so good. I used the gray. After I get all the blemishes and stuff fixed, I will move over to the black and actually use this as a pre-shade. So I did everything in gray first, and then, like I said, I'm going to go over to the black, paint everything black once I know that I've got all of the little defects and stuff and little problem areas covered and fixed. Then I'll hit it with black, and that will be my pre-shade color, and then we'll move on to actual laying down the primary color of the kit, which is, I haven't decided yet, but it's going to be a light tan color, maybe the same sandy brown that I used for the M1A1 Abrams. I'm not sure. It might actually be something a bit lighter than that, but I will figure that out later. So for the time being, I'm going to turn on my fan and my exhaust fan here. I'm going to start sanding some of these other parts now that I actually drilled some holes so I can put these on skewers. Makes it a little bit easier to handle, but there's a lot of little surface scratches everywhere. When the kit was made, it just looks like, I don't know, not a lot of care was taken into the surfaces before the molds were actually made. So there's a lot of surface scratches that have presented, that you can see a lot easier now that I have the primer down. So I've got a little piece of foam here with some parts that I've already gone through some of the smaller stuff, like all the little missile pods, the missiles themselves. This is one of the foot sections here, but there's just a ton of scratches back here on the back side, and some of this stuff you may not see as easily like on top, but there are still some blemishes, that like a rivet missing here. The other side looks okay. I don't know if I'd fix that, but also when he was gluing these parts on, when he was actually making the piece, you can actually see some of the glue that squeezed out, whether he used CA glue or what he did before he molded it. I'm starting to find more and more issues with this kit, and I've had some people really questioning the quality of it versus how much the kit costs. And I'm really hoping with the gouge that's going to come in the coming weeks, if it looks anything like this one does, I mean, again, these are all things I can fix. It's not that huge as far as repairs are concerned, but with the amount of money spent, you kind of expect things to be a little bit better than they are. And if the gouge is anything like this one, it will probably be the last kit that I buy from Moscato. Sad to say. I mean, I really like the scale. I like what he's doing so far. As far as the scale, some of the kits they're just not available on these scales. It's great, but if I'm going to spend over $400 on a kit, I expect it to be pretty good. I mean, better than this. So anyway, let's get started. I'm going to turn my fan on. I've got some of the larger parts on top here. I've got most of the sections done on this one. This is one of the bottom, my back heel sections that was really bad. I had to make some do some more sanding repairs on it. Once I filled this giant air bubble with CA glue and some resin dust to kind of use as a filler and to kind of bond it all, it still needed a little bit of additional glue and sanding, so I'm going to have to touch that up a little bit when I get going here. So I'm just going to keep plugging along. I'm going to turn the fan on and start sanding away. This exhaust fan has worked out really good. I'm really happy with it. It's just a small, compact little unit, but it works out great for capturing these the dust and stuff, especially when doing a lot of sanding. Now that I've got most of the major stuff out of the way, it's just primarily finishing the surfaces and getting rid of the little blemishes and scratches. So I'm not doing the amount of really deep sanding that or with the files and stuff like that I was in the initial steps. Hey, what's up, Nick? How you doing, bud? Good to see you as well tonight. Just starting I finished the first round of primer, so now I'm going through and re-inspecting each one of these pieces and looking at all the little blemishes that need to be addressed. I'm going to start with this piece tonight, and we'll keep going forward. So, any questions, throw them in the chat. I will answer them. I'll put them on screen, and we'll go from there. So, yeah, there's a lot of little surface scratches. So, I'm basically using some sanding sticks. This is 180 grit. I've got 100 grit here. It's probably a little bit less than that now because I've been using it. What the heck was that? Hold on 1 second. Okay, don't need to worry about that. This started out as a 100 grit stick, but I've used it so much it's probably a little bit lighter in grit than that is now because of the amount of use it's gotten out of it. It's more like maybe a 180 or a 240. It's still pretty aggressive though, and it's good for knocking down some of these scratches. So I'm just going light pressure with this one initially, and then I'll finish it with some of these others to make it nice and smooth. But I'm not too concerned about the bottom, because really you're not going to see this. It's going to be standing on its own. I'm still going to paint everything, but I'm not too concerned about any scratches that are here, just because it's going to be unseen. But this area at the top of the foot will be seen, so I want to make sure it's good. So. And I've had to, with this surfacer, this is the first time I've used this Evo surfacer. I will say, one of the cautions that somebody told me about it when using it was that it smells a lot stronger than the Mr. Color Surfacer, and that would be correct. I would have to agree. After doing all these pieces, it does have a lot stronger odor while spraying it than the Mr. Color Surfacer. Still not an issue if you have a decent amount or decent spray booth with a good enough exhaust system. It's fine. It doesn't bother me any. I don't wear a respirator or anything anyway. I have a really nice spray booth that moves quite a bit of air, and as long as I have that running, I'm good. But I did notice it was a little bit stronger, quite a bit stronger actually. So then I'll have to go back through, retouch these with primer again, make sure everything's clean, and then the next step is to use the black surfacer and do everything in a black coat, which that's also a surfacer as well, but it will act as my pre-shaded color before I start laying down the final color. So Nick, I gotta ask you, are you actually in Germany? Is this, or is that just a nickname? I don't know if George ever clarified that when talking on his stream or whatever. I just see it in your name, and I've never asked. I thought maybe I should find out if I'm not sure, because that would be cool. It'd be nice to know somebody over there if that was the case. Either way, it doesn't matter really. I just out of curiosity. There's quite a few scratches in this thing. Yeah, it's almost, it's kind of disappointing, really, the amount of blemishes, and the more and more that I find, some of the, oh no, actually, it's just your last name. Oh, okay. Nice. Well, no worries then. Question answered. It's a pretty cool last name. It's just, it was a little bit disappointing with the amount of repair work I've had to do so far to this thing. One of the guys was commenting on this and having more experience than I do with garage style kits like this. Even some of the ones he's had with very limited production, but much better shape than this was. And this being the first one that I've ever, I don't have any baseline to really compare it to something else. You know, it's not like I had something earlier that I could say, yeah, this one was really good, and then you know, this is just a one-off of issues. But like I said, I'll see what happens when I see when the gouge comes through, and we'll take a look at that. And if it's really bad, then that'll be the end of that, I think. Like I was saying earlier, there's some, you can see where the glue, when you use these little surface details to glue them on, these little details right here and here, when you glue them on, you can actually see the glue where the, you know, the whatever glue squeezed out from underneath, and that is showing up through my primer as like a ridge. So I'm going to have to go through and knock down those little edges. It's going to be too bad, but still, it just seems rushed, perhaps. You know, what did you fill that big air bubbles with? Well, I tried. I could have used epoxy putty. This one here, this is the one we're talking about. You can see that giant, and it actually not only took up a lot of the top surface, but it also went down into this area here. You can still see the outline of it. Initially, I was trying to fill it with just CA glue, but it was so big, and a lot of the sanding that I was doing was creating a lot of resin dust. So I kind of just used that as almost like a woodworker would use sawdust and glue to make like a putty. And I filled that with the resin dust and the CA glue, packed it in there. Used this little sculpting tool to just kind of pack it down in there and get it relatively even. And then I sanded it again, and I used my files to really grind it down and make a nice smooth. Almost got it the first time. I mean, there was a couple of little areas that I had to retouch. In fact, I've added a little bit of glue here because I could see a nick out of this corner. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll fix that tonight as well. But for now, I'm just in the parts I'm working on this piece here. So that was essentially what I did. It worked out well. I do have some really good epoxy putty that I could have used, but at the moment it didn't even dawn on me to try to use that. I'm so used to using CA glue as a gap filler because I use the thicker stuff anyway. And I mean, this even says, gap filling, medium gap filling formula. So it's a little bit thicker than some of the other products from Bob Smith. Now I'm just trying to knock down those little outlines of where that glue squeezed down on the top of the foot here. I do have a rivet that I'm going to have to replace, but I took the time one time. I actually ordered some of these a while back. These are from Wave. I think I got them from USA Gundam Store, but they're little glue-on rivets. And these are just the round ones. There's ones that look like bolts too, so they're different sizes, but the small ones work out great. Just trim them off, and I've already replaced a couple of rivets, like on the top of the leg section here, the thigh. See these? There's two here. There's also two more down here. Those have been replaced. Let's see if I can focus. Come on, focus. Don't be shy. It doesn't want to focus. Let's see if I can. There we go. That's a little bit better. You can see them here and here. And those I just glued on after I was done sanding everything and getting rid of all the. But it looks like I've got a little blemish I still need to address. So there will be some more sanding done. But now I've got to work around those new rivets. So grind those off. Because some of these that he put on here, I'm not sure what he used to glue them on, but they're either just come off really easily or they were never there to begin with. So I'm trying to them out. So that's what I've been using, just CA glue mostly, and if it's a big hole that I'm trying to fill, I've been using some resin dust in combination with the CA glue. But other than that, it was little tiny bubbles. Yeah, just CA glue alone is fine, and some Instaset. I've got a giant ball of this Instaset here. I just bought that. I haven't used it. What I've got left. I think I maybe have a little bit more in the bottle, but I use quite a bit of that, especially with stuff like this. So the Instaset works great. It helps process these little things a lot quicker because you can set the glue instantaneously and then go back and sand everything right away instead of waiting for it to dry overnight or something. And so far, I think I'm pretty happy with the Gyno's surfacer. I mean, the odor is a little bit to deal with, but it's not too big a deal. It's very similar. It reacts. I should say it sands and reacts very similar to the Mr. Color, Mr. Hobby surfacers. Sands about the same. So I've always been happy with. What's up, Kobayashi? How's it going, man? I've always been happy with the Gyno's clear coats, so kind of expected them to be very, very similar as far as performance-wise. So far, it hasn't disappointed. You still have to thin it out of the bottle with. I'm using leveling thinner from Mr. Hobby. Works just fine. So right now I'm just taking off these surface scratches that I can see from his manufacturing process. There's quite a few scratches in some of this. So now that I've got the surfacer down, I can just knock down those high areas, and then it should be fine once I apply single coat. Filing, yes, I'm filing. Filing and sanding. Looking at files to. Yeah, I'm just 2 to 1. Good question, Nick. I don't typically measure, um, even when I'm thinning paint. And here's why: because every color has a different type of pigment. Removing surface scratches from manufacturers. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Let me answer Nick here real quick. So every color has a different amount of pigment in it, so it requires a different amount of thinner in order to be good enough or thin enough to go through your airbrush. So typically I do it by feel. I'll add some thinner, stir it up, and I look at how it clings to the glass jar that I'm using, but also how it drips off of my stir stick. And that's just through doing it through experience. Really, it's just having it done that way. I can feel, I can see how thin it is, by how it drips off the stick, and that kind of gives me an idea, a baseline to go by. Now I might need to add a little bit more thinner to make it right, but initially that gets me really close, if not perfect, every time when I see exactly how it reacts to the amount of thinner that I have in it. I just look at it, and as I'm stirring it, I bring the stick up, watch it drip off the stick, and that'll tell me if it's thin enough or not. And that's just what I've done. I know that some people, I think starting out, it's probably a good idea to maybe do a 2 to 1 or something like that, or 50-50, depending on what it is you're doing. But especially when it comes to mixing paint, it just seems like every color is different, so you can't really, at least for me personally, you can't really use a ratio, because it's never going to be the same depending on how strong that pigment is and whatever color. Like white especially is a really hard one to get right. It's just because it's so heavy. It's such a heavy pigment, and so it takes a little bit more thinner to get it right. But it's also easy to go a little too far, and then you can't get the coverage you want. It's a fine balance. So I just do it by look and feel. And then, of course, you can also listen to your airbrush. If your airbrush is whistling as you're painting, then your paint's probably too thick. I'm using this old toothbrush here to clean off my sanding sticks here, because as this primer comes off, it starts to saturate the sticks, and so I'm just dusting them off, letting the exhaust fan pick it up, take it away. I've got quite a bit of a line here on the inside of this toe. I'm not sure you can see it. Let me see if I can get the focus. Okay, it's gonna be right in here. And it's like an outline of where the pieces came together. There it is. See that? I've got to fill that. There's like a line right here. And that's just from when he scratch built, or however he made these parts. Those gaps were there, and they went into the mold. So I've got to fix it. But I couldn't see that very well until I primed it. So now that I've got the first round of primer down, now I'm starting to see those other imperfections. So I'm going to actually add some glue to that right now. Yeah, so anyway, Kobayashi, I am removing surface scratches, and it's mostly because this kit was built from scratch, and So each part, unless it's a duplicate like the feet, or obviously you just make one and there's no left or right to it. So you make one and you duplicate the mold, make it twice. So both of them are identical. So I'm probably going to have to do it to the other side too. And I'm just putting a little bit on the toothpick here, and I'm going to fill that line up. If I want to, I can add some of that Insta-Set. But I can go back and hit that with my sanding stick later, and then it should take care of it. So when I hit it with the second wave of primer, those lines will just go away. So it's pretty good, other than that spot inside the toe there. Combination of sanding sticks, sanding sponges, all just to take these little blemishes down. So when I hit it with primer again, the leveling thinner should make all those little defects disappear. I used to dive into the whole model painting stuffs, ended up jumping into other stuffs. That's a cool piece to craft though. That's cool. Yes, you're coming to us tonight from Twitch. Watching me over there on Twitch. It's good to see somebody from Twitch. I don't get a lot of people from Twitch watching. It's kind of a niche market over there, with most of the people on Twitch are gamers, I think, and I think that's where, generally speaking, most of the audiences look for. I get a lot of artists like this kind of stuff on Twitch, but we're just throwing it out there, trying to change that. We're making a little bit more people exposed to the hobby, and maybe even try something new one of these days. So quite a bit of work on this one piece. It's funny how you start out thinking, okay, I've just got a couple little things to finish or to clean up, and then as you're looking at the piece, as you start going along, it's like, oh, there's another one, or there's another scratch, or there's something else. I'm going to hit this with the... Well, that's cool. Well, that's what I'm here for. I mean, this is what it's all about, right? Sharing our experience in the hobby. And if people want to dive in and try it themselves, that's good. That's what I'm here for. It's the community, people. That's most important, I think. The camaraderie and stuff like that between all the people in this community. So, all right. So I'll let that accelerator sit for just a second, and then I'll come back to this and hit that inside toe section. In the meantime, I'm going to take a look at the second side. Yeah, this one's got the same thing on this side. So this was obviously one piece that he made two of. Obviously, there's no left and right, so they're all going to have very similar, if not the same exact blemishes. And what I actually did here is I drilled a hole in a place that won't be visible, because I was trying to figure out how am I going to hold this and paint it. So these skewers, I just drilled a hole and stick it straight on the end of the skewer. That's how I'm doing that. That's a great thing about primer. You can see all the flaws in a kit. Also, the worst thing about primer, right? Yep. You're right, Kobayashi. It is like woodworking. In that way, it's just way more intricate. Yeah, it just depends. This has a lot of surface details and stuff. I've got some things to complain about. And then on the other hand, I got nothing to complain about. I'm really happy with the size of the scale of this thing so far. But on the other hand, the flip side of it, the cost of it alone really kind of put a sour taste in as far as like the amount of money spent, and then you start seeing the quality issues show up. And I know he advertises it as a kit that's designed for skilled modelers, because obviously you got to know what you got to have the experience with resin. And, you got obviously some people might jump in on this. This might be their first attempt at resin, and more power to them. But it definitely helps to have some experience in that area before you dive into something like this. But he advertises it as a scale model designed for skilled modelers, because there's going to be a lot of work to finish it and make it look right. So that being said, I don't expect to pay close to $500 for something like this. Again, like I said, I bought the gouge. We're going to see what happens when that one shows up. We should see that in hopefully about a month or so. I just saw a post the other day that shows that he had the decals printed. They look really nice. But I'm waiting to see what exactly shows up. The first inspection of that is going to be crucial to determining whether or not I ever buy another kit from Moscato. I know Moscato's been making stuff for a while. It just, at the time when those earlier kits came out, I didn't have the opportunity or have the resources to actually buy one. So it was mostly just, this looks nice, but it's out of my range. But now the opportunity presented itself. I decided to dive in, buy one, buy two, and see. So still on the fence. We'll have to see. Let's see what the next one shows up, what it looks like. And believe me, I will review it. And I will do it live. And we'll talk about it. So, Kobayashi, where are you coming from in the country? Are you in the U.S. or are you somewhere else? I think Nick's from back east somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know for sure. I can't remember. You guys are catching me from Pacific Northwest in Washington State. Oh, Southern California. Well, that's where I came from, actually. I lived there most of my life. I was born and raised in Dana Point, California. South Orange County, around the beach areas there. Moved up here in October 16. It's funny you say hellhole. Yeah, I don't regret it. I never thought I'd ever see myself leave California, but now that I've been here for 7 years, I definitely do not regret it. Although our healthcare costs are becoming kind of a headache, but other than that, I've had a pretty damn good time. Yeah, I know. It was one of those things where a friend of mine had moved up here for work, and we're in the same industry. We worked together at the time when he left, and it was just that the opportunity presented itself to follow him up here and do it. So that's what happened. He has since moved to Idaho, but I am not following him over there. You can forget that shit. I'll stay right here. I'm not going to Idaho. Well, no, you never say never, right? Sometimes life takes you in a direction you just didn't expect, and that's kind of what happened at 16. You know, the joke was we were talking about it at a restaurant, whether or not we should move up here. And it's funny we say now because it's like, you know, never make life-changing decisions over Mai Tais. And we were having a few drinks, and next thing you know, we're here. So I'm trying to kind of keep this in the. I've got my little fan over here, so that's why I'm kind of working on this side a little bit. But as long as I'm in focus in the picture, so you guys can see what's going on. So I'm just doing the second foot here, the front of the foot. I've still got to fill that gap in the toe, just like the other one. So once I knock down these little blue spots that I can see. Looks like I got a rivet. I got to replace a rivet on both of them. There's one of these that's just gone, and it's the same on both sides. So we're about in SoCal. Orange County, LA County, Riverside County, if you don't mind. If you don't want to answer, I don't. I totally get it. No big deals. I'm just curious. We're kind of from the same stomping ground. So I put a little bit of glue on this toothpick and fill that section on the side of the toe here. Once that dries, I can sand it down, and then the primer will go back on, and it will Riverside. Okay, so you're close to where I used to be. I grew up in Orange County, but I met my wife in San Bernardino, so all around that same area. Going to add a little bit of this. I don't think I need it, but a quick set on both of those feet. So yeah, I was for a short time actually. But when I met my wife, I moved out to San Bernardino from Orange County, and then for a short time, actually not a short time, 2.5 years, I was driving back into Orange County from Highland area, next to Redlands there, in the 330 freeway that goes up to Big Bear. And I was driving 140 miles a day to work. And finally, my wife's like, you know what, we're going to move back. We planned on moving back to Orange County. We just didn't have the opportunity until 10 years later. But we ended up there for 5 years, and then we moved up here. Alright, so the first one, I can't remember which one I was working on first. City zone borders, I'm in the OC, I'm like right in epicenter of 3 cities. Okay. Still, yeah, you're still close. You're right in that general area. Let's put it this way. You're probably very familiar with the 91 freeway. And what a shit show that was. And the toll lanes that go over the 241. So right now I'm just knocking down the glue that I used to fill this little bit of a seam line that's These are from the parts that he used to assemble this piece, but because there's a seam there, it ended up transferring to the mold, and so I'm just filling it with a little bit of glue. I'm knocking down the glue and making it nice and smooth again, so when I reprime this, it should virtually disappear. That and the classic paint of the 22, yep. Yeah, here at Garden Grove, that's all that whole area. It's just so busy. I do miss a lot of my friends there. Sadly, I won't be able to make it down to California this year for SCGMC in November. Oh, Nick's in Texas, huh? I just now saw that. Wow. I thought you were back east. Well, that shows how much I know. Nothing but old people. Yeah, very true. You go to Palm Springs, you get your fair share of that, right? Alright, so just going through my sticks here, trying to get this to the point where I'm satisfied. The problem is now that I've taken the primer down, I can't tell for sure if I've got it 100% fixed, but that's part of this process. Is you gotta prime it, fix your blemishes, and then hit it again. Lather, rinse, repeat. That's how we get to the final product. $1.50 hot dogs. Old people come Costco. And we've got Costco's up here too. Nothing new. All right. I need to get a sip of something to drink here. Wet my throat, my tongue. I think I'd spend so much time on these two pieces, but because they're so big and with these multifaceted edges, there's a lot of areas that just need to be smoothed out. Not a ton of work, just a little touch here and there, but ultimately, I guess I got one thing going for me here is because this is a destroyed kit, a Defender. It's going to have been abused and beat up. It's one of those more. It's not like an elegant Valkyrie, that's out flying around, and yeah, they get pretty dirty too. But these guys are just put through the ringer. They're beat up, they're dirty, they're dented. So if I have a little blemish or a nick or something, I can just add that to the weathering. When I get to that stage, I can add those scratches to those areas, and if there's a little scratch or a nick or something, I just take a chip out of the paint here. I mean, this body section, there's a few on these front edges. There's a ton of scratches on this whole side piece. I mean, the shoulder is going to go in here, but there's just major scratches where he sanded this down before this side's not as bad, but this one's just horrific. I mean, there are so many, you can't see them on camera, but there's just a shit ton of scratches in this. Some of this you won't see, like in here, it's not going to be a huge deal, but around these edges of where the doors, these missile doors go, it's unfortunate. I mean, again, it's nothing I can't fix, but let's see, where are my tweezers? I need those. here. All right. A little bit, a little hair or something stuck in paint. So yeah, I'm going to have to go back over this piece later. But yeah, I'm just going to keep plugging away because there's quite a bit to do. So I fixed, looks like I fixed that seam line on the inside of the toe there. Both sides are pretty good now. Another thing about this resin too, it's pretty soft. So you have to use lighter pressure than maybe you would like on plastic, just because really, I mean, while you're trying to sand this stuff down, you're actually creating, you can actually create scratches and grooves into it. I think that's one of the challenges, a little bit harder to deal with because it is a pretty soft resin. It makes it easy to drill and file, but it also makes it easy to blemish, and those blemishes stay behind when you're after you're done sanding. So I'm starting with the higher or the lower grit sanding sticks, but when I get to the higher grit stuff, it's just very, very light pressure, and it's just basically trying to level that first layer of primer down. And you can see the scratches underneath because now it's a smooth surface, but what you're seeing is where the surfacer has filled those little scratches. Okay, I think I'm pretty much done with these here, and I very well may need to come back to them and clean them up again once I do that next wave of the next round of primer, because it just might still be some blemishes there. I'm going to go back. I've added some glue on this. I'm going to touch this. This is one of the heel sections here. I just had to, a little bit of a nick, too much that I needed to fill it. So I'm just going to fix this real quick. How tall is a kid? You have to tell like 1/100. Let's see. Good question, Nick. Let me throw that on the screen here. I kind of stacked it all together, kind of held it in my hand to see. It's going to be about 11 to 12 inches, I think. Maybe, I would say no shorter than 10, but probably more like 11. It's big. I think there might be a photo out there somewhere with me holding let me see if I've got one. I thought I took a picture with a ruler next to it. No, doesn't look like it. I'm trying to go through my photos here real quick. Well, I don't have a ruler next to it, but you can kind of see that's my hand holding it. It's pretty damn big. That's what's cool about it, because it's the same scale as all the 148 Valkyries that I have. So it's going to fit in quite nicely with those guys. I've got this thing. Nice and sanded now. I don't feel any. After I primed it, there was a pretty big ridge, but it feels good now. So I think this one's done. But again, we'll find out once I get with primer again. So now to grab one of the larger pieces here. I've also been sanding these two. This is one of the shoulder. It's not really like a hard point. These are the larger missiles. I've decided to close the doors on this. I'm not going to use these big missiles inside. The doors were hard enough to get to fit right. I had to scribe out the hinges where the hinges go because they wouldn't line up properly. And when you tried to close the doors, they were so close together they wouldn't fit. So I actually had to shave them down a little bit, a couple of them in the middle here to fit the pattern and also be even, left to right, up and down, stuff like that. So, but I had to kind of notch out these little grooves a little bit more because they weren't in the right spot. I also put the back door on and closed that, included that. But I've already sanded this and got it ready for a second round of primer, as well as the searchlight. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do in here. I tried to find these little some of these lenses. It's like Gundam Mono-Eye type. They're on a sheet of plastic, and they basically just stick on there. But I don't have enough of them to fill each one of these lights. I was going to try to put 8 of them on here and then put the lens on top of it. I thought that would look nice, but I'll have to figure it out. But I did also some gap filling and seam filling on this piece, primed it, sanded it. So now that's also ready for round 2. But I'm not going to use these guys. They didn't fit right anyway without having to remove a bunch of materials, so they're getting dumped. So this is one of the thigh portions here, like the left leg. The ammo boxes on the side are glued on. I had to shave those down flat and then glue them on the side. So there's a few little blemishes. I replaced a couple of rivets here and here, but I'm going to go back through and sand. I can see some like little mold lines on these two surfaces here, so I'm going to hit those. I've already sanded the top of this again. Because there was a big hole here that I had to fill. That one's all filled and sanded. So not a whole lot of work, additional work to these two, but I did kind of the same thing. I just drilled a hole in the bottom so I could just put it on a stick, because the knee portion is going to be glued in here and you won't even see that. So I'm just going to twist this like it's kind of a tight fit. That's what I wanted though, so I can put that on a stick and it doesn't move while you're trying to paint it. But yeah, I like all the little rivets and stuff. It's just like you look at the inside of the leg, there's a bunch of rivets here on these panels. So I get it to focus. You see like these rivets around here. Then you go to the other side and all the rivets are kind of missing. They've been just knocked off because they were so small. They didn't manage to get through the mold process. So I may be using quite a bit of those plastic ones and just cutting them off and replacing each one of those rivets to fix all that. Clean up my sticks here. What's nice about this fan is they just brush these off and it just blows right into my exhaust and right into the filter. The filter just pulls out easily. It's easy to clean. Just kind of blow it out with some air. Because I've mounted the camera to the wall now instead of on the table, I can bump everything and it doesn't shake. It's probably the biggest improvement to my setup here. I'm just taking a little bit off. It's not a huge blemish, but it's a little bit of a thickness variance, a little bit of a surface variance there. So I'm relying on that surfacer to kind of take up those little variances while sanding it. So then when I hit it with a second round of primer, it'll virtually disappear. Might be a little bit right here. This is where one of those bubbles was. Quite a bit of this was filed down to get it right, but there's a little bit on the outer edge here. I may have to. Yeah. I think I'm going to just put a tiny bit of CA glue on that. So I can re-hit that. Didn't take much. Especially now that I've done a majority of the filling. It's just a little bit of touch-up. All right. Let my whistle once more. Cheers, everybody. Miss anything in the chat? I'm going up here. You don't see. Looks like we're all caught up. Haven't missed anybody. Okay. I'm going to grab the other side. This is the right leg. But this one, see, this one has more of a, this was one of the larger holes. This was the side that was really bad, if I'm not mistaken. So this was one of those holes that I filled with, you kind of see it there. I filled it with putty or not putty, I filled it with glue and the resin dust, but you see how it left some little holes behind. So I'm going to have to reapply some glue there and then sand that down. Overall, it's almost 100% fixed. It's just a little bit here and there that needs to be redone. Pretty good. But I couldn't see the actual finished, I couldn't see the blemish there until I primed it. So now that it's there, I can really fix it this time. I'm just going to take a little bit through this spot. This one was really bad. I took a picture of this before I had filled it, and that was really where a lot of the people that have been with experience with the resin kits like this were chiming in like, oh my God, just, again, I don't have the experience. I don't buy a lot of these, so I can't really compare, but I was getting questions like, and they sent it that way to you, that kind of thing. It was like, why did it even get through the QC process? But I guess that's what you get sometimes when it comes to privately made, homemade type kits like this. Just so I'm letting this glue sit for a sec before I'm hitting it with the Instaset, because I noticed if you hit it with Instaset too early, sometimes it causes it to kind of, I don't know, I'm not saying crack isn't the word, but it'll almost dry from the inside out, and then it makes a surface irregular, so it almost like doesn't give you the desired effect. You got to go back and fill another hole because so if I just let that sit for a second. You know, and the funny thing is that like this part was missing a bunch of rivets. This one's perfect. I mean, they're all there, except for the ones in front. I did replace the ones in front, but there's a little bit on the front here that I have to sand down. But this other side is way better. It turned out way better than the other way. So I'm going to take down a little bit of this. Not damaging my new rivets. My computer decided to seize up on me 15 minutes before I started the stream, and I was like, oh no, I'm not doing that. So I had to restart it and make sure everything was cool. Fortunately, it decided to do that with enough time for me to shut it down. I mean, I couldn't even shut it down. I had to physically force it to shut down. It was one of those weird, quirky things with Windows every now and then. All of a sudden, it's like, nope, I'm just going to sit here and not do anything. And there's a little bit, there's some scratches. Actually, I'm going to look at this too. Oh, this side's good. This is one of those things where there's a left and a right. So both of these pieces were individually made. It's not like the foot section that has, one of them works for both sides. So one of them is better than the other. This one had a big air bubble. This one's got some scratches, surface scratches in the back here that need to be sanded down. Whereas this one just had, missing rivets and anyway. Just stuff I gotta fix. Oops. You see those once you take the primer down. You get back down to the resin, you can just see the primer that remains is because it's in one of the grooves. So if you get close enough to it, close enough to that level, the scratches aren't too deep. Oh shit, I just realized I missed. But get some more glue. I missed one of my pinholes here I'm going to fill. Right on the top. Alright. Sit. What's the sound? Focus here. I kind of am hot. The camera is like being finicky here, and it's focusing on everything up here. Okay, I'm gonna move these parts back out of the way. This one out there. There, that's better. Sorry about that. I didn't realize how long that's been sitting like that, but it looks like it was out of focus because of what everything was right here. You guys didn't say anything. You gotta tell me when my camera's out of focus. Alright. So that's fixed. The scratches have been removed. A little bit more right here. Looks pretty good. Alright, let's go down to this top now. Now I got all these holes filled with glue. I'll go back through, you can see the glue shining there. So I'm just going to go back and knock these down. Should be even with the surface when I'm done. And the primer should make it look nice. This is a 100 grit stick too, so it's pretty aggressive, but I've used it enough that it's not quite as aggressive as it used to be. So I can use it for this kind of stuff. It's good for knocking down that glue, but not to the point where I'm leaving like super deep scratches that I've got to try to sand out. Go back over with my 180 stick here and clean it up. This is where that big hole was. It's like right up against this corner. And so I'm trying to I've got to fill this hole, but I'm trying to sand it down and not move into this area right in here. A little bit of a challenge. So I can see where the glue still needs to be knocked down, but I don't want to go too deep, so I'm trying to just get those surfaces to even out a little at a time. That's better. Smooth it down. Just about there. That's pretty good. It looks pretty good from here, but again, it won't be able to tell for sure until I get it with that primer again. I think I'm pretty close enough here. I think that's going to be good. Alright. Happy with that. There's a couple of things I noticed on this one. Oop. Some more scratches here. Scratches. A lot of these were, again, from the process of, when he was scratch building these parts. It has grab a chisel here. This is one of those mold lines where the mold halves didn't come together perfectly, so you leave a distinct line. This is underneath the hip joint area, so it's not going to be really exposed much. So I'm just trying to take down some of that with the chisel, and then I'll go back over it. Won't be seen too much because it's going to be on the back of the inside of the leg. So yeah, that's pretty good. A little bit more right here. Okay. All right. I think we're good there. All right, I think this one's good to go. I say that now, but you know what? When I hit it with primer again, I might think otherwise. All right, I got a little bit of glue to knock down on this one. Okay. Let's clean this off first. It's all right. Cool. Thank you. Special delivery. My wife just brought me a nice glass of wine. Now we're about 7:15 my time here. Go for about another 15, 20 minutes maybe. All right. Wasn't much of a blemish on this one to finish that up. So this is coming out nice and clean. Just have a tiny bit of glue there I had to add on that one, so we're good. But I wanted to double check this. I got to look over these very carefully because, like right on the inside bevel here, there's some pretty deep scratches. It almost looks like a file was used and then not fully sanded because those deep scratches are still there from the file. And this is the hip joint too, so like the inside of the leg, it's not going to be seen that closely, so I'm not going to kill myself too terribly bad on the inside, but I will definitely make sure the outside that will be more visible will be fixed up. All right. One last look. Ooh. That was my ESPN app telling me that the Kings are getting ready to start playing right now. So all you any hockey fans out there, ready for a good hockey season? The Kraken played earlier today. Saw that game on at work when I was leaving. But I'm a Kings fan, diehard Kings fan. So those are my boys. I know I saw something. I want to look at this other leg piece. So I thought I saw, and I might have been looking at another piece. Actually, this is pretty. Those mold lines, particularly, is what I'm looking for because those aren't just little, pinholes or air bubbles. Those are like long, jagged, sometimes jagged blemishes because of the mold halves didn't quite line up. So when the piece is poured, then it creates that a really noticeable, visible line. I don't see it though. I must have been looking somewhere else. I'm going to go back over these again, but I don't see it, so I'm not too concerned. I must have been looking at a different piece. Yeah, this has got some pretty good scratches. gluing this thing together is going to be interesting because I'm thinking because of the way the ball joints in this thing were designed, I don't think I need to pin it, but I just don't know. I might have to. I just don't know. All right, that looks pretty good. I think. Yeah, not bad. I plan on weathering this pretty heavily, considering this is obviously a destroyed, very a very well used defender. If they weren't destroyed, then they got beat up pretty bad in normal service. Now this is the ankle joint essentially. There's not a lot of cleanup here to be done. Yeah, I don't even think I need to hit this at all. Looking at this back fence, everything's pretty clean. I think this is good to go. Just going to re-grab that one, throw it back up on the skewer. Let's see here. Okay, let's take a look at the other side now. This is also a duplicate. It's probably the same. I don't think I'm going to need to, unless there's a mold line or something like that. But other than that, it looks pretty much the same. Yeah, I think we're pretty good. It's going to be painted a different color than the foot anyway. It's like a grayish color. All right, what's next? Let's take a look at these. This is the knee portion. Quite a few scratches on this. A lot of scratches. So I'm going to take this off the skewer. Hit it. It's going to take a lot to get this to. Now this will be done in a gray color anyway. But there are just so many little, I don't even know if you can see that, but there's so many scratches in this area. This is pretty much what you're going to see. This is going to be covered up with the majority of the thigh portion here, but on the side it's just tons of scratches. This might be one of those that takes 3 or 4 waves of primer to get it right, just because there's so many scratches and they're deep. Let's see if sanding that out. Does that make it? You see that a little bit better? Now that I've taken some of that primer off, you see all this where the primer is still there. That's where the scratches are. I mean, it's just deep. I did not do that while I was, doing my initial cleanup work. Just couldn't see those until I primed it. Fortunately, the front is really good. It's just mostly the scratches on the sides. Sides and the back. The back won't be seen that much. All right. Not as deep as I thought. These are going away pretty quickly. Thankfully, they're not. They looked worse than I think they were. once I hit them again with the second wave of primer, it should, with the leveling thinner, it should even that out quite nicely. All right. Piece keeps getting in the way, causing my camera to focus. There we go. Okay. I think we're good on that. Stick that back on. Grab the other side. It's probably going to be the same. Oh, yeah. Yeah, quite a bit. And hopefully, not sure how much more. I've got a lot of this cleanup to do. Hopefully by next week I will already have a second wave of primer done to where I can see if there's any final cleanup on any of these pieces before I start painting. If not, we may end up doing a little side project in between, because obviously if I'm stuck in the middle of the painting process, there's going to be nothing for me to really do on air. I mean, my this little exhaust fan is in person. It's kind of loud, but I know it doesn't show up much on the camera. But my spray booth just way too noisy. It'll just sound like a 747 taking off for 2 hours, or an hour and a half, or whatever. So chances are, if I am in the middle of painting this, I may just pull something else out of the backlog and start snapping that together or something. We'll see. Oops. Yeah, so basically, this piece here, this is going to go right in here and glue in just like that. So anything up here I don't really need to worry about. Just everything underneath that I need to see. So I think I got all the scratches out. You can still see the scratches there with the primer that has filled those scratches up. It's one nice thing about surfacers is that they'll fill those minor scratches. So even though they're visible now, once I hit them with primer again, they may just go away. But we'll see once I get to that point. But that's how that piece goes in. So I'll paint this first, and then I can just glue these two together. The tricky part's going to be the knee. There's a pin that goes through the lower leg portion and then through this. That pin has to be finished on the outsides of the leg. So I'm going to do some sanding and fill that hole basically where that pin goes through. So it will won't be visible when I do the final paint. So I'm going to have to wrap this, probably use some parafilm to wrap this up so it doesn't get any overspray on it while I'm painting the lower leg portion. We'll see. I'll show you how that's done then when I get to that point. Oops. I think this one is this one, yeah. So yeah, these are both scratched up pretty good. But it's part of the process. All right, so what should we start next? Here's the, here, I'll grab one of the lower legs here. So this is the lower leg. Here's the where the ankle ball joint goes. Hey, what's up, Julius? How you doing, man? You catching me right at the end, buddy. Got about another couple of minutes before I sign off tonight. So this has one of those mold lines that I'm talking about. There's kind of a jagged line here where the mold halves didn't quite line up. So there's a little bit of a raised section. There's also some scratches and a pretty, almost looks like a rivet, but it's a pretty good size blemish here that I'm going to have to knock that down. A lot of scratches here in the back that I have to sand down and smooth out. At least the front with these, raised surface details of the front and majority of the sides looks good. Pretty darn good. It's just really just the back that's kind of beat up. So that's going to take some time, but and then here's that. This is the hole where that pin goes through. So that knee section goes in, the pin goes through, and that allows for some mobility to pose it. But I'm really not going to be posing this thing. Once I got the position I want to get it in, it's going to stay there. I'll probably just glue everything to keep it from moving, to be honest. But yeah, there's some pretty heavy scratches back here on the back of this leg. It's just bad. The more and more I work on this thing, the more and more I go, man, I'm all for, small business people making money and stuff, but this is a lot of money for this kit for the amount of defects that are in the molds. But again, I don't have a ton of experience with it. I mean, this is the way it is. I don't know. What grit or sandpaper do you use on the primer before paint? Put that on the screen before we go. I am using. Okay, I've already primed these. I did the first wave of primer on all the parts that I've been working on tonight. I'm basically starting with this stick. This, if it's got some really bad stuff, whether I'm knocking it down with knocking down some CA glue or something like that, I'm using this 100 stick. Now it started out as a 100 grit, but I've used it quite a bit, so it's probably more like a 180 to 200. Maybe a little bit more than, a little bit coarser than that. So on curved surfaces, I'm using my sanding sponges here. This is a 240. The pink one's a 240 and a 400. That's only really two that I'm using. Those I'll sand it with one of these sticks, finish it with the 240, and then go over it one last time with the 400. That usually smooths everything out to the point where it's good. The sticks, I go from the 100 to this one here, which is a 180. But again, this one's been used up quite a bit, so it's actually probably closer to a 240, if not a 300, maybe 350, 400 grit stick. So it just depends on how severe whatever blemish that I'm trying to clean up is, how, which one I start with. A lot of the stuff I did with the 180 just because it's pretty minor. But if I'm knocking down a big section and I want to take some material faster, I'll start with the 100. So I hope that answers your question. Most of the scratches that I'm seeing on this, I'll probably be able to take down with the 240 and the 400 grit because they're curved surfaces, so I'm not going to want to use a stick. I'll end up using the sponges on that. And so, with that, I think we're going to call this one a night. I think we're at a stopping point anyway. So I hope that answers your question, Julius. I know we're just finishing up here. Thanks for coming in, though. And as always, everybody, Nick, Kobayashi, Julius, all you guys, anybody who's watching who didn't chime in tonight, that's fine. We still love you. Nonetheless, I appreciate everybody that helps support me and come in and with your words of encouragement and support and everything like that. Thank you again for everyone that come in and join me tonight. Appreciate each and every one of you. So with that, we're going to we'll catch you on the flip side. Be good humans. We'll talk to you soon. See you next Wednesday. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, we'll be here next week. So catch you guys later.